Have you ever been surprised by your child tantruming from what appears to be out of nowhere? Or you thought you were prepared for a potential tantrum and things still went south? Not all tantrums are created equal, and understanding why your child is melting down can change everything when it comes to how you respond. As a behavior specialist and autism mom, I have experienced many tantruming children, including my own, and know how challenging this can be. In my last video, we talked about how to handle meltdowns in public. In this video, we're going to go a level deeper, breaking down the 3 most common types of tantrums in children with autism and what you can actually do to help in each case. Let's dive in. First type of tantrum we're going to discuss are attention-seeking tantrums. So what do they look like? Well, there could be a lot of crying involved, yelling, hitting, throwing things, but particularly when your attention is somewhere else. It's basically their inappropriate way of trying to get you to focus on them. Now, why is that happening? Well, basically, big behaviors get big reactions. And big reactions equal big attention. So as I've said before, there's no such thing as bad attention for our kids. So the bigger, the better, the more they get it. Now, you see that happen a lot because they don't always have appropriate language to use, and sometimes they do, but regardless, in the end, if that behavior gets reaction, that's all they wanted. They wanted your attention. They don't really care if it's negative or positive, but they have you now. So again, your child may just come on and like hit you, and you start with, "You don't hit mommy." And now, but it doesn't matter because you've just stopped working on your computer and you're focusing on them. I just had a situation the other day with a client where at the end of the day, we got her out to the car. She gets in the back seat. She's all strapped in, ready to go. I come around to the front of the car to talk to mom, who's sitting in the driver's seat. While we're talking, her daughter was getting fidgety and she wanted to go. So instead of saying, "Hey mom, can we go now?" Instead, she started kicking the seat and started yelling and getting upset. And I kind of guided mom through it and had her kind of stay with me. And when the child's kind of calmed down for a moment, was quiet, I had her give her language to say, like, "Mom, can we go home now?" But when she went to say that, her child was like, "No." So this went on for a while, and she escalated, and then there happened to be some pens in the back seat. They went flying toward the front, and again, trying to get mom's attention. A nice big reaction, but mom stayed talking to me. She did not remove her attention to her because of something really negative. So we went through this, and ultimately, the little girl did finally say, "Mom, can we go now?" And mom had been prompting her every so often as there'd be a dip in the behavior. But ultimately when she said that, she's like, "Okay, let's go now." We stopped talking and they went on their way. And in that situation, the mom did not reinforce all those very big bad behaviors. So her daughter will now learn that when you speak and use your words appropriately, and now she has a new phrase she can use, that is successful, not the big behaviors that get the big reaction and the big attention. So that can be really tricky because it's really hard because they're big and they're a lot and you can't always address it, or you feel like you have to address it in the moment. So what to do? So like in the example I just gave you, you want to, when possible, ignore the behavior. Now, like I said, in that situation, it was kind of contained. We're in a car. There was not a lot of people around. So, but sometimes when they realize you're not getting that attention, okay, this isn't working. I got to try something else. Also in the situation, a replacement behavior was given. In the situation, like what are they trying to communicate in that moment? Yes, they want my attention, but what would be an appropriate way to get that attention? So find the words that they could use to get your attention. And again, you really want to use that. I just want to reinforce it again about using planned ignoring. You can't just ignore everything, but you can also ignore by removing eye contact. Sometimes you'll have a child who's trying to hit or do something, and they do have to be removed or put somewhere so just keep themselves safe and keep you safe. But you don't have to look at them. So if you have to like put their hands down, put them in a seat, and just kind of hold them for a moment to keep them calm. You don't want to do it while you're looking straight in their eyes. You want to just kind of have your head down and you're just keeping until they're calm. Like, I'm not giving you that attention at the moment. And you're not talking either. No talking, because the actions speak louder than words, and it's really important to make sure that you remove the talking, remove the eye contact, but you may need to physically address them. Also, the other piece, which I've discussed in a previous video, is catch them being good. Because we tend to only give attention to our kids when they're doing something they shouldn't. And it isn't until they start fighting with their siblings or throwing things across the room that we come over and, hey, what are you doing? And we start engaging because they're doing something they shouldn't. It's hard because we just naturally don't think to praise a child for just sitting playing with their toys or just sitting eating their snack. But that's something we want to show, that when you're doing those things that are appropriate, we want to reinforce that. We want to praise that. So that's a big focus, is catch them being good. Now, also with catching them being good, you have to think about not just at home in certain typical situations, but also when you're out. And let's say you're at the store and you're at Home Depot or someplace and you're picking out carpet and your child's waiting there and you're going back and forth discussing what color, what type, or how plush it should be. And your child's standing there. It's hard, but you want to think like, oh wait, stop. And tell your child, I love how you're waiting so nicely. You're doing such a great job. And even possibly offer them, like, hey, maybe we'll get something to drink after we leave here. But even apart from that, just giving that attention, just saying something positive and catch them being good. And also, of course, again, be mindful of the age of your child, how long they can stand around and just wait while you pick out things, which can take a very long time. But catch them in those moments too. It's so important to make sure you put those things out there for your child so they get that steady dose of positive attention and they don't need to rely on some of these bigger behaviors to get your big reaction. Another common type of tantrum is the escape or task avoidance tantrum. This typically occurs either right before or during a non-preferred activity. So a lot of times a child may be in an indoor play space or in a toy store, and now we have to transition to something a lot less reinforcing. So you'll see it then. Also, for homework, you'll see that a lot where the demand gets a little more difficult, so you see your child trying to pull back and engaging in other behaviors because they don't want to do it. Another typical example is also cleaning up toys. I want to keep playing with my toys. I don't want to stop and do something else. So there you'll see behaviors at that point too. Now, what you can do about these behaviors is since it's escape, they're trying to get out of doing something, or it's a task avoidance, they're trying to get away out of doing a certain task, we have to maintain that demand. Different from attention-seeking behaviors where you remove all attention, here we're going to maintain that attention and stick with it. So to address escape or task avoidance tantrums, you can do a few different things, and we'll kind of break them up into little chunks here. So for those tantrums that occur with transitions, where you're at a fun activity or doing something you really like and have to transition to something not so fun, I would suggest first you want to provide warnings or countdowns. It's really helpful where you have to transition. Okay, you got 5 minutes. In 5 minutes we're going to go, and you start with that, and then you come back with the 4 minutes and the 3 minutes and the 2. I tend to give myself 15 minutes to do the 5-minute countdown. A lot of times the kids I'm working with can't tell time like that, and they're not walking around with a watch. So I'll start that just to give them a little extra time to process that we're gonna be leaving soon. Another way that a lot of times I use in schools are the visual timers. So it's a nice visual representation of how much time is left, and as the red goes away, you see that it's almost time to go. So that's a really nice way to have a visual, physical representation of the passage of time. Another thing that you can use is a first then card, where like first we have to do this and then we're going to do that. So a lot of times to help them transition from one to the other, well, first we're going to get our shoes on, then we're going to go home. And so it'll help them see something concrete. And that's a big piece of it, is like making things more concrete for them to understand. Another thing that you can do when it comes to homework, in particular. Now, that's a big demand, and that can be really hard for our kids, with learning issues as well, and for typical kids. But have you ever had like a test? You get a math test, and you sit there, and you open it up, and you see all these problems, and you just freeze because it's like so much, and it's like I can't do any of it. And a lot of times it's just a matter of like covering things up and breaking it down. Well, instead of having your child have to do their whole packet, let's say, of math for homework, maybe take a piece off and or cover up part of it and say, let's do these 2 or 3 problems. And then they get a break. And then they come back and they do a couple more. But breaking that task down into smaller pieces so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. That's extremely helpful with homework. And also, again, adding some kind of reinforcement system. So let's get through those 2, and then you can have a break. And then come back and do more, and then have a break. And even in that situation, you can have a first and then. So first we're going to do these 2 problems, then you get a break. And when you're done that, we're going to go back to our homework, and then we're going to get another break. So just to kind of make it easier, because otherwise it's just really overwhelming, and you're going to get a big tantrum from that. But the big piece, the big takeaway is avoid letting the tantrum get them out of demand. So what you also may see is when you are having them clean up their toys, which they don't want to stop doing, and you're trying to help them put them away, they'll go and they'll hit you. And now instead you're giving them attention. Hey, you're not supposed to hit mommy. And now you're focusing on that, and now they're not cleaning up their toys. And so it's like that they got out of the demand. I know it seems kind of strange, like, no, but that's not good. They're hitting me. But stay focused on the demand, on the task at hand. The first thing you said was to clean up your toys. Don't get distracted by the other behaviors they're going to do to look over here, shiny object over here, smack you across the face over here. Stick with getting those toys away, and then address that they shouldn't be hitting you. Don't forget, though, that even if your child is pushing back while you're trying to walk them through the demand that they're supposed to be doing, the task at hand, that you still reinforce their attempts at doing it. So you may be kind of struggling a little hand over hand, helping them put the toys away, and they're pushing back, or your child's going, no, I don't want to do it. This is too hard. It's too hard when it comes to their homework, but you get them to do one at a time. You're like, praise them. But I like how you're doing a good job. You're getting there. Look, you're doing it. This is great, even though it's a struggle at times. But it's really important to reinforce what we do want them to do, to bring that attention to that, to show that this demand, that you're doing it. And also in the end, the child will feel better when they're able to do it like a big kid, or they're able to accomplish and get their homework done and do a good job with it. So, and the more you do it, the more positive experience it is for them. Another common type of tantrum is the sensory-based tantrum. Now, this type of tantrum is probably the most misunderstood, and because it looks like a child is tantruming for no reason, but it's actually sensory overload. What you may see your child do is they may cover their ears, drop to the floor, flailing with no obvious trigger to any of this. Now, why is this happening? So our children tune into or may tune into sounds, different things that affect their senses that we don't pick up on. And it can be unbearable and overwhelming for them. For example, some of our kids will pick up on the hum of the fluorescent lights above, which we may not be tuning into. Or just if you're at a mall or a store and just that din, that sound in the background of just the mall noise and the water fountains going in the background and all the different stores with their music going all at the same time. There's also, and a big piece that people don't think about, are the smells. The smell of the pizza place and the pretzel place and the Cinnabon and all those others all at the same time. That can be really overwhelming. So you see our children kind of really just melt down for some of this. And it's really their nervous system is overwhelmed and getting dysregulated. So they don't know how to handle that, and you see the meltdown. Now, what you can do to address this is to create a sensory toolkit that you bring with you whenever you go on an outing. You want to include different things like fidgets or chew toys or some either an iPad or something where, and they also have headphones, they can listen to music, potentially a hat to kind of start blocking out some of the extra visual stimuli that they get. So you'll know your child and kind of put together things that will help calm them and help regulate them. And of course, make sure you, first off, identify potential triggers within the environment. The more you go out, the more you kind of start to identify these triggers. Now, sometimes you don't, and there's something brand new happens, or you're in a different location, so you're not really sure what may happen. So try to identify those triggers. You can also avoid exposure. Over time, that's something you can address and increase that, but for right now, your child's going through something, you want to kind of avoid that as possible. The other thing is when you are out, look for or try to come up with potential spaces if you have to pull aside and get your child to a side to kind of calm them down, to give them a quiet space, which may be difficult depending where you are. Another thing is provide functional language. Teach them functional phrases like, I need a break, I need to go out. So, and be able to then take them out. Sometimes you can't, especially at a bigger place like a mall, you can't quickly or easily get outside. But if you can, always suggest that when you kind of go into a store, go into a place, look around to see where can I pull aside if I need to. And you'll know if your child's a child who has sensory-based tantrums, that should already be on your radar, and you're kind of always thinking that way. Additionally, before you even leave to go out and you're putting together the sensory toolkit, basically your bag of goodies and stuff that your child could use, have them be part of it and make sure they pack up things, maybe besides like a fidget or a chewy toy or some music they can listen to on headphones or their hat. They may also have some kind of soothing item, whether it's a blanket, a doll, a stuffed animal that they can also be part of, and pack that up. Also practice and say, what happens if you're feeling kind of worried, or whatever language you want to use for that your child has used, and say, when you're feeling this way, you can ask for it or say, I need a break, but kind of practice that before you even leave the house. So, because when they're in that moment, that crucial moment, sometimes the words aren't always there. So it's good to kind of practice that and role play it before you leave the house. We've covered the 3 most common types of tantrums, but now we got a little tricky piece here, and that's called the combo. And that's also fairly common in that potentially a sensory-based tantrum occurs, but then becomes escape, because if there's a sensory overload, now that your child wants to get out, and they want to escape that situation. So you're going to get first the tantrum because of the sensory overload is too much, but then they want to escape that, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and now we're getting escape type of tantrum. Or you can have an escape type behavior where, again, a child doesn't feel like cleaning up their toys, and instead, like I said before, they hit you. And that's more of an attention. They want to get your attention. Hey, I don't like this. I'm hitting you. I don't want to do this. I'm going to hit you. And now you're talking to me, and now you're engaging. It's still part of the escape, but now it goes to that, and then they're running, and then you're chasing around the house, and now it's just craziness. So a lot of times you can have what we call multiple functions for a specific tantrum or behavior. So it can be attention with escape, and sensory. So it can go all a bunch of different ways. So how do we tease this apart? Where do we start with all this? So one thing, a really important tool of the trade is what we call an ABC chart. It stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Now, these are really helpful in kind of teasing out what is reinforcing some of these behaviors, like what is having your child still do this behavior over and over again. What are they getting out of it? What is causing it? The why, which we're always looking for. Why are they doing this behavior? So as you see with this chart, we're tracking what happened just before the behavior, what the behavior was, what your child did, and what happened right after. Now, actually that center column, the behavior column, is probably the simplest column to fill out. And it's one we'll probably focus the least on, because you know what the behavior is. You see it, it's hitting, it's biting, it's kicking, it's dropping, it's throwing things, whatever that may be. But what's really important is not so much the behavior, but what happened before the behavior occurred and what happened right after. That's where we're going to get our information on what's keeping this behavior going. We have a behavior. The child started crying and screaming, but what happened right before? What literally happened just a moment before it started to happen? Don't try to think like, oh, well, they were upset, they were sad because it came home late from school and they couldn't find their stuffed animal and all these other things where you're getting more into the weeds of the background. And it's just, no, literally, what happened a second before they started doing this behavior? As you telling them, I said, clean up. So, and then we have them crying and screaming. And then what happened right after? How did you handle it? You gave them a toy. You could have said, stop that crying. Write that down. You told them to stop crying. You sent them to their room. You walked away, just ignored them. Whatever it may be. It could be also the fact that you did absolutely nothing. Okay? So you start writing these things and tracking it. And you want to write down exactly what was going on before the behavior started and exactly what happened right after the behavior. What we look for are patterns over time for some of these behaviors to see, like, why does the behavior keep happening? And what you may start to see is that similar types of things are happening always right before the behavior occurs. Or on the end of it, on the flip side, the consequence that the child will keep, you'll see, oh, we always responded a certain way after a certain behavior occurred. So you may have a child who starts getting upset, and let's say you have grandparents that are taking care of your child a lot. So they come over and they want to give them a cookie. They get upset, they start crying, and they drop to the ground, and grandma says, oh, here, have a cookie. It's okay, and gives a cookie. And then another time the child starts throwing things, and the grandparent says, oh, here, let's play a game. Or here's your toy. You know, and so just looking to see, oh, wait, they're getting attention every time. They're getting something every time. And then you kind of look at their strategies you want to use for when there is attention. It could be an escape behavior. And so with escape behavior, then you know you need to maintain that demand, that every time it's time for homework, they start getting upset, they start throwing things, they start saying, I'm stupid. And then now, how did you handle that? Well, I talked to them and I said, no, you're not stupid. It's okay. Look, we'll come back, we'll do it in a little bit. And so maybe they get a temporary break. But you start writing these things down, you'll start to see the patterns emerge, and then you'll help tease out, is this an attention-seeking behavior? Is this an escape or task avoidance behavior, or is this a sensory behavior? And then from that, you use the strategies to address those behaviors. I've included this ABC chart in the description below, so you can link on that to access this free behavioral tool. Every behavior has a purpose. When we understand the why, we can respond in a way that truly supports our child. Now, no outing will be perfect. Tantrums are going to happen, whether in public or at home, but everyone is a step toward independence. I can't reinforce that enough because it's so important. It's sometimes natural to want to avoid these things, to avoid going out, to avoid certain things, and parents turn themselves into pretzels trying to avoid the potential tantrum. But the more we do that, it's kind of kicking that can down the road, that each time when we finally get to it again, it's just going to be a little bigger and a little bigger to get around. The best way is through. Start as soon as possible, because the more you get this behind you, because our children only get bigger, and so those tantrums get bigger. So I just want to really say that it's so important to address them, especially when your children are young. Push through it. It will get better. It will get easier, and it's all the best for your child. If this video is helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with others. And also let me know in the comment section below, what types of tantrums do you see most with your child? Let's learn from each other since we're all in this together. Thanks for watching, and remember, you've got this.